So we're now going to mix it up a bit. I might get the ladies to sit in the middle there. We're going to have a really nice relaxed Q&A now with Phillipa, or Pip, I should say, Harrison, and Lisa Ronson. So I'm going to do a little bit of intro and then we can give them a warm welcome. So we're going to talk about creating emotional connections with our consumer, exactly flowing on really beautifully from what Adam has just mentioned about having that connection, looking at those triggers, why they want to come here to this great land. So making Australia the most desired destination on earth involves emotional connections, and how can industry best use Tourism Australia's campaigns and platforms to enhance the customer journey from consideration to researching, booking, experiencing, and then hopefully eventually sharing their Australian holiday. The more they share, especially in the land of social media, the better it is for us. So Phillipa Harrison joined Tourism Australia in 2017 to head up the organisation's international operations as well as global distribution and partnerships. And in this role, Pip oversees Tourism Australia's network of international offices, and she also manages airline relationships and distribution channels. Can you please welcome Phillipa Harrison? Yay! And as Tourism Australia's Chief Marketing Officer, Lisa Ronson is responsible for creating and developing the agency's brand assets for global campaigns. Global marketing manages the rollout of all of Tourism Australia's marketing strategy, ensuring that Australia's tourism marketing efforts continue to cut through in the competitive international marketplace. Please welcome Lisa.
Thank you.
So, ladies, we're going to have more of a bit of a make yourselves comfy. I know it's a bit.
I'll just get the clicker. I forgot it. It's a good start.
We're going to have a bit more of a relaxed Q&A with Pip and Lisa, and then we'd love to open it up to you guys on the floor. So feel free to make notes and think of questions as we're chatting away here. So we're going to kick it off and have a bit of a look at the Dundee cameo cast trailer first up.
Good day, losers. Yo, where the kangaroos at?
Brian Dundee?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Why do you keep saying really?
What do you mean Dundee's lost in the outback? He is the outback.
Nobody talks about Mick like that.
Careful with that knife, mate. It's pretty sharp.
A knife? How big?
What do you mean there's two of them?
Free beer! Free beer! Free beer!
You ever seen a humpback whale give birth? It's a bloodbath.
Speak to me, little guy.
Yeah, when your dad did it, he was much...
Okay, and when my dad told me about this, he was just like, yeah, I just came up and you did this, okay?
I just don't think he can see you from back here.
I don't just own this newspaper, son. I own this country. And Dundee's gonna learn who the most dangerous animal in Australia is. It's me.
Whatever. My mom's side of the family are all jazz musicians, so kind of comes natural to me.
Wombat.
Oh, it needs to be well done, ladies.
Thank you.
So, Lisa, let's kick it off with you. When you're creating, like, in terms of an emotional connection with a consumer, take us through how this works. Like, how do you sit back and approach it from your position and say, okay, here's what we want all of these people to come here, spend more, come over to Australia. How do you begin the whole emotional connection process?
Sure. I think there's three main elements to that in terms of focusing on the customer, the culture of an organisation, and also creativity plays a major role. So looking at the first one, and you can see on that slide that we ensure that the customer is at the heart of absolutely everything we do. That is easier said than done in day-to-day business with all of the competing demands and things like that. But Adam spoke about it before. We've been very single-minded in really targeting those consumers that are going to come and spend the most in the Australian economy. It's not a mass market play, it's definitely a high yield strategy. So the first thing is to really understand who the customer is and what problems you're trying to solve for the customer. And again, Adam touched a little bit on that, and it's really all about that experience and experiencing the Australian way of life, and that is our purpose. So really understanding the customer, and also understanding that they're not sitting around waiting for our marketing messages, sadly. We do have to cut through a lot of clutter and a lot of messages that they get on a day-to-day basis. So firstly, understand the customer. The second one is the culture of an organisation. This was a very big, bold move for Tourism Australia, and if we didn't have the right culture within just our own organisation, because it impacted everyone at Tourism Australia, but also the support of our board, and I bust his chops, but great leadership from John O'Sullivan to make sure that this actually happened, because there are a lot of steps along the way where it was a risk. And if it hadn't gone the right way, people would be sitting here on their own right now. But you do play big bets, and they do pay off. And then the third one is all about creativity. This is something that I feel very passionately about. To really reach consumers and cut through all that clutter that I mentioned before, you need a great idea. And whilst we had some fantastic Australians in that lineup, they did do it for their love of country, but also their own brands are really important to them. So they wouldn't have done it, and Chris has been quite open about this actually in the media, that if it wasn't the right idea, it wouldn't have gotten that many people involved. So creativity is really, really important.
Well, and we're going to talk about ambassadors in a little bit, but authenticity is so important. People can see straight through when someone's doing a paid gig for something that they're not that passionate about.
Absolutely.
But when you follow, I follow Chris Hemsworth Insta, and it's literally he's living the life that he would normally live, but he's just got this, the other day he had one of his children on his back surfing, and I was watching it, it's getting 2.5 million hits. Yeah. And part of that was, oh my God, he's got actually a kid on his back while he's surfing. He's an incredible surfer.
He's a god. Right?
It's almost this passive advertising, because you're watching him be this incredible dad in this incredible environment. So it's sort of not direct marketing. It's just him living his life.
That's right.
Is so authentic.
That's right.
One of the campaigns that really stood out just for me personally was the world's 50 best. Like, that was incredible in terms of looking at when you're looking at your customers and what they want. And, that was a massive success.
It was, yeah. And
it's
about being single-minded with your message. We talk a lot about ambassadors, and they have to represent the brand values of what we're trying to project. But for us to say food, wine, drink, gin, distilleries are fantastic in Australia is one thing, but it's another thing to have 47 of the world's 50 best chefs here in Melbourne, telling their story, and through their big social followings as well. It just carries such weight and such credibility than Tourism Australia doing it on their own. So that was a fantastic success. But they didn't just come to Melbourne, and it was hosted really well in Melbourne, but they travelled all around the country, and they experienced the very best of the diversity that we've got to offer.
So when you're developing campaigns, are you always looking at how partners and trade can get involved and extend the campaign? And can you give us some examples of how partners have done this in an innovative way?
Sure. The answer to that is yes, absolutely. We work in partnership. So one of the slides that John showed earlier was our CDP research, and in all of the 16 priority markets that we work in, we're in the top 5 for aspiration and intention to come to Australia, and usually 1 or 2. That drops right down when you get to the conversion piece, and so there are some barriers, which are, the cost to get here, the distance, and they're selling points, but they're also barriers to actually that conversion. So we really need to work with partners to move customers down the purchase funnel. So we do everything in partnership. And for the Dundee campaign, for example, we had 20 key distribution partners involved in the campaign, and the idea there was really just to get them to amplify the message that we're talking about, and just getting the whole market to talk about Australia. So we asked them to give us itineraries that we could feature on the site, and we were fairly prescriptive in those itineraries, because if we just asked them for their best-selling itinerary, we would have got, we know exactly what we would have gotten, they all would have been the same. And we were unashamedly trying to really, in this big push, show the breadth and depth of experiences that we have available in Australia. So we did that, and we then asked them to get involved by talking about the campaign in their channels. So we had a lot of noise going out in the market, and that's really important because we don't just look at creating demand, we need to look at the whole kind of ecosystem, and you know, once the message is there, we want them to see Australia and Australia travel experiences everywhere that they look. So that was the intention with that. And then in terms of innovation, we had one airline partner, and that was Qantas. Their brand registers as synonymous with Australia, kind of off the scale in the US. So they were a really natural partner for us.
And they were in the original film as well.
And they're in the original film, yep. And so we worked with them, and they came to the table with all of the right things in terms of tactical offers and backing up and creating that urgency for conversion. But then they also went a step further. So they could see the opportunity in this, and they created their own bespoke campaign that fed off the themes of the campaign, but then also, you know, I guess talked about Qantas a little bit more in it. And one of the, I guess one of the conversations we had with Qantas around talking to Americans in the US is that if Qantas already knows about them, talking about amplifying the Australia message on their own assets, then they probably already know about Australia. So we wanted, we needed, I guess, to go a little bit further. We wanted to speak to Americans who haven't necessarily interacted with Australia before. So in terms of innovation, they brought another partner on board. They brought on American Airlines, and American Airlines have a huge database of people. I think 100 million people travel with them every year. Their frequent flyer database is over 8 million people. And so they brought those guys to the party, and then we found that we were talking to all of these people who were high-value travellers who had travelled long haul before, but not necessarily to Australia, and that was the whole point of the campaign.
Okay, I'm going to keep moving along so we can hopefully get to some Q&A at the end, but do you have a process of who you choose in terms of partners that you work with?
We do. So obviously Chris Hemsworth is our global ambassador. He's been on board with us for 3 years now, or coming on 3 years. And to your point earlier around that post during the week, he's generated over $200 million in equivalent advertising value for us. So that is really, really hard to beat. But what we make sure of is anyone that's representing our brand, they have to be aligned to our brand values. And they have to be really genuinely, you know, he moved his family back to Australia, he lives here, you know, he talks about it so positively, he holidays here, so he's really living that Australian way of life. And that's really the filter by which we put all of our ambassadors through. And we don't just have our global ambassador, we also work in market with some key ambassadors that come down and do trips and things with us. So there's a couple to talk about here.
Yeah, so we think it's really important that not only we have an Australian global ambassador, but we also speak to people in market with ambassadors that resonate with them. So we had the Australia-China Year of Tourism last year, and our ambassador was Wu Shubao, and he's an actor, producer, singer, triple threat in the Chinese market. And he was able to, he came down with his family, he experienced, you know, the Australian way of life. So that's not his way of life, but he experienced it and he shared it with the rest of, you know, all of his followers in China, which are really significant. So we have him. We also have a Bollywood star, so Pariniti Chopra. So she's a newer friend of Australia of ours. So she came down for 10 days earlier in the year. She absolutely loved it, and she's coming back again. So I think, you know, for us, she's a great ambassador. She does. She only endorses products that she really believes in, and she is really passionate about helping women in India and helping people beyond just, I guess, her own rising star. And I think for us, she had the authenticity and the genuineness that we were really looking for in terms of somebody as, you know, to showcase Australia to the world. So she's one of our newer ambassadors, and we're really excited about doing more work with her as well.
I thought Jessica Mauboy is a fantastic choice.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, Jess is just a delight to be around. She's just a wonderful person. She appears as she does, you know, in the interviews and things like that. So again, she's just genuine. She's so passionate about Australia. She's so passionate about Aboriginal and Indigenous heritage. She's really, really a great advocate for that. So she's a great ambassador for Australia, particularly our Aboriginal program.
Have you asked her about wearing a Tourism Australia dress to Eurovision yet?
I haven't done that yet, but yeah, we could. We could definitely do that.
See? John, you could get on that case. See, she's about to have the world stage at Eurovision any minute. You need a little Tourism Australia logo there somewhere, I think. You have suggested that. You didn't like it. Oh, okay.
Shit.
Getting a different version up here, John. Let's talk about the Super Bowl campaign because super smart. But when I heard it, I was like, God, that's such a smart idea. Why haven't we sort of cashed in on that more so, which we may have, pardon my ignorance, beforehand. But how did you build on the emotional connections that you created with that campaign and then, of course, keep the momentum going, keep the flow going with that?
Well, we approached it in the fact that when you look at our high-value traveller, there's no other platform in the US market, which is obviously one of our focus markets, that appeals to the high-value traveller more than the Super Bowl. You know, it's the indexing of high-value travellers watching the Super Bowl is something like 300 times. So we knew that that was one platform where we could reach half of our target audience in one go in the US market, which is unheard of, really. But we also knew that coming with the Super Bowl platform, you can't just put in any old ad. You know, brands have gotten massive backlash for getting it wrong culturally, putting in work that they'd used before. So we, you know, obviously approached it very, very seriously, and we approached 3 agencies in the US market that, you know, the criteria was they had to be very creatively awarded, but with an Australian heart. So we knew that if we didn't get the right creative idea, we weren't going to go ahead with the Super Bowl idea because it is such a big platform. And when we saw the Dundee idea, obviously, we just knew we had to make it. And yeah, that's how we got there. But in terms of extending it, throughout the shoot, we also did a series of interviews with Danny Dundee McBride and some prominent Australians to really start to break down that kind of notion that Australia is really big, and if you don't know it very well, it's hard to sit down and start to plan a holiday to Australia. So we wanted to seed some of the diverse experiences that we all know that we've got here, but is quite completely foreign to Americans. So we use this interview question-answer type format in a fun way. So we refer to it as infotainment. And so that's the content series that we've put on the back of Dundee. So we'll watch a little bit of it.
Yeah, let's have a look.
Hello, yo, yo, yo. Welcome to Why Australia. I'm Danny McBride, and I'm here with Chris Hemsworth, who apparently is Australian. So, Chris, do you guys have any nice beaches around here or what?
Absolutely. Many beaches. Some of the best in the world.
Really?
Let's just say the best in the world.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Apparently, you live in Byron Bay. Is it nice or is it kind of whatever?
No, it's beautiful.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's my favorite spot in the world.
Great. Okay, what guy who's like into surfing as much as I am, what do you think are the best spots to go shred?
Probably go to Victoria.
Okay.
The coastline of Victoria is, I'd say, a little more rugged and kind of exposed to the elements. And then the further north you go, a little warmer, more of a sort of tropical vibe. And
so we'll just go to all the beach here. You can surf at any of the cool beaches here.
You can surf anywhere, yeah.
What's a non-dangerous but still impressive sounding animal I can swim with?
A sea lion.
A sea lion.
Yeah.
They're not dangerous, sea lions.
What did you say? No.
What's that little tiny thingy at the bottom of Australia? What is that?
Oh, that's Tasmania. The freshest air in the world. Thick, beautiful bushland, some fantastic surfing.
Wow, all in that little tiny thingy.
All in that little tiny thingy.
Wow. To blend in with the locals.
Yeah, wear this.
Yeah, should I just wear this? Is this kind of what I would wear if I want to blend in?
Oh, for sure. That's kind of, that's the attire.
This is the typical deal, okay. Chris, thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge with me.
Absolutely, anytime, mate. Thank you for being so wonderful and receptive.
No, don't say anything else.
No.
And that's Why Australia.
That's great. I love how relaxed it is.
Yeah, and that's how it was deliberately designed. I think we've got a couple more that we're going to play, but I have to get on the clicker.
Hello, welcome to Why Australia. I'm Danny McBride and I'm an American. And this is Chris Hemsworth. He's an Australian. Hello. What's the biggest sporting event in all of Australia?
I'd say it's the AFL Grand Final, Australian rules football. It is like soccer and basketball as far as kind of whoever has possession controls it and you're aiming to get it in your goal at the end.
And helmets or no helmets?
No helmets.
Oh, perfect.
No pads.
How do you pass this footy?
It's called a hand pass, actually.
Okay.
And you have your hand here,
Okay.
little fist, and boom.
And you're supposed to catch it, or you're just supposed to take it in the chin?
You're supposed to just chest it like that and close your eyes.
Apparently the whole country gets the day off to watch a horse race. What is this race, and how can America have it too?
It's called the Melbourne Cup. It's a big horse race. It's fantastic. Everyone gets all dressed up, and even if you don't even like horses or racing,
You go do it.
you still watch that and enjoy the day off.
I love that. What's the deal with this boat race in Tasmania, and why don't you just fly there?
Sydney to Hobart yacht race is quite a big event in Australia, and takes about 2 or 3 days.
It takes you guys 2 or 3 days? It's funny, I did it in 15 hours when I did it.
Did ya?
That's great.
Okay, welcome to Why Australia. I'm Danny McBride, and I'm here with pop superstar Jessica Malboy. How you doing?
Hi, hello.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to
So
see
you own this place, huh?
Yeah, a bit of it.
A bit of it, that's good. Jessica, where on this map are you from?
Actually from a place right up the top called Darwin in the Northern Territory.
Wow.
Yeah.
How cool is Darwin?
It's where the Yolngu people live and where they speak Yolngu Mata.
Oh, wow. Is it true Aboriginals are the oldest living culture on Earth? And how old are we talking?
Yes. I read it was about 70,000 years old.
70,000 years old.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah,
Is there anything in Australia to see between here and here?
absolutely. Well, right smack bang in the middle, we've got a place called Uluru, and that's where that big rock is.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite not boring museum?
I reckon Mona in Tasmania.
Are there any women in Australia named Mona or no?
I've never met anyone named Mona.
Just museums.
Yes.
Well, guess what? That's all the time we have today. This has been another super enlightening and exciting episode of Why Australia with Jessica Mwapo.
Mao boy.
And one last.
What sport does this creature play in?
What do you reckon that is?
Quokka. Have you ever encountered one of these and had to fight for your life? Have you ever battled it? They usually smile. I've seen pictures of them smiling.
You get a lot of people doing selfies.
You can take selfies with this creature.
This is just a not really play sport.
Do they surf?
Yeah, might as well now. Quokka.
They're lovers, not fighters.
Oh, so cute.
So cute.
Quokka don't surf.
This one does.
Great. They're really refreshing, relaxed. They reflect very much our culture here, don't they?
Yeah, our way of life. So that's what we were trying to get out of it. That's why they're particularly on the down low, not really heavily scripted or anything like that. They just riffed off each other, so it was great.
Fantastic, congrats, such a great campaign. Let's talk about, Australia is a pretty overwhelming country to think about travelling to. We were talking before in the break that it's almost like looking at Europe and going, oh God, where do I start? Like, do I fly into Sydney to Melbourne and then what do I do? It's pretty overwhelming for an international person that hasn't come here before. So in terms of Tourism Australia, what are you guys doing to sort of break down that and make it more accessible?
So one of the ways that we've done that to great success really is trying to create a lot of passionate advocates about Australia, and that's through the Aussie Specialist Program. So that's a program that's been going for a long time now, almost 30 years, but we reinvented it a couple of years ago. And it's really just around getting the frontline sellers, because even though online is still really important, people do a lot of research there, there are some markets where the predominant way of booking is through a travel agent. So we need that front line of sales to really understand and know Australia, but also be passionate about it and get excited when somebody sits down in front of them and says, I want to go to Australia, or I want to go somewhere, where should I go? So the Aussie Specialist Program launched a couple of years ago again, relaunched, and it's in partnership with all of the states and territories, so we're very one voice on this. And we have put 23 trainers and digital content specialists around the world in market. And over the last 2 years, we've had 50,000 people sign up to the program. There's 30,000 current Aussie specialists or people who are passionate about selling Australia. And the program is just going incredibly well. So we're just really excited about that. We think it's really important in terms of, our job is to create the demand, but then it's also to help people to convert that business as well. So, yeah.
So we talked a bit before about ambassadors, and in the age of social media and 24/7 exposure to technology, pretty much, that's how we're all living on, watching still people on their devices all day today. Content that people want to share is gold and key, and sometimes a really cheap way of getting your product out. So Tourism Australia's partnership with BuzzFeed on Aussie News Today, that's a really great example of how content can be fun, have a purpose, can be really engaging. So how hard is it though to strike that balance of creating content that people love? Because there's a big difference between liking something for me on social media and then me wanting to share it. How do you get that right?
Well, I think one of the key things we did for the youth campaign, it was based on the insight that, with this constant news cycle, youth were the most negatively affected by it. They were starting to look at the world in a fairly bleak way. So what we wanted to do through our partnership with BuzzFeed, and they've been a terrific partner in providing insights and, a greater depth of understanding of the millennial audience, because sadly Pip and I aren't in that audience, providing those insights, and also their ambassador program through BuzzFeed Mates. So there were a couple of components to it. It was the co-branded content creation, but then really importantly getting ambassadors from each of the source markets to come down and travel around Australia, create their own content in a really, again, credible and authentic voice for other youth to look at. So it was a really quite simple campaign, but by working with partners like BuzzFeed, it really did take it to another level. And we did look at, deeper media partnerships with the likes of Facebook and Google to really bring it to life, but then also trade partners in market.
And I think also, we have very high-profile ambassadors and influencers, but the BuzzFeed thing created ambassadors who are just, Joe Public, I guess, and they were telling their story in an authentic way and seeing Australia for the first time and communicating that through their eyes. And we thought that was really important, and that resonated really well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at most campaigns now, or launches that I will do in my line of work, and they've got some really high-profile people there, but a lot of the time they've got influencers that nobody knows, but they've got a massive effect on social media. Whether it's following or whether it's the number of followers or what they're actually doing is really interesting. So you have to change your attitude to your brand, don't you, and involve those ideas.
And let them tell the story of your brand, which is, sometimes hard to do because you want to control that, but you just can't, particularly with a complex brand like Australia. I mean, the chart that Adam put up before, which had us and then all the other influencers that are Australia, was, I think, really telling. So.
And it was the couple of layers of ambassadors too. So we had the Honey Badger, Lincoln Lewis and Tegan Nash, so they were going around the country and developing some pretty funny content, as well as the BuzzFeed Mates. So it was the top down and bottom up to really get that authentic story of Australia. But I think we've got a little quick video on
let's have a look.
Aussie News.
The youth of the world are craving good news, so we launched Aussie News Today.
When good news breaks, we'll be there.
Our new global youth platform that will share all the good, hilarious, weird and wonderful news from Australia, all in the name of getting more working holiday makers and backpackers down here. Aussie News Today kicked off in attention-grabbing style. We had our very Aussie anchorman, Nick the Honey Badger Cummins, broadcast live from on top of a global icon.
G'day, Honey Badger here for Aussie News Today.
You've got a big announcement. What the hell are you doing on the top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge?
Why not deliver our first broadcast on top of one of Australia's biggest and most famous icons, the Harbour Bridge? I just called up the bridge climb and said, boys, what do you reckon? And they're like, sweet as.
That's so Australian.
Followed up by a very grammable launch event on the Sydney YHA rooftop, attended by our anchors, media, social influencers and trade partners.
Today's launch is all about launching Aussie News Today and really telling the story as to why this market is so important for the country. It's really new, fresh territory for us because it's so different to whatever we've done before.
I am so excited to be a part of the Aussie News Today anchor team. Working with Link Lewis and the Honey Badger, they're such vibrant characters, and I think that we're going to have a lot of fun together.
I get to go and see this amazing country and share the stories that everyone needs to hear. With our culture, with our people, with our attitude,
you know, it's good to put that out there to put a smile on people's faces.
This campaign is crucial. Working holiday makers are of vital importance for our industry, so we're really, really excited.
We want more people to come here and just say how fantastic our country is. There is nothing like Australia.
We also sent our Aussie News Today correspondents, who were discovered through our world-first BuzzFeed Mates partnership, on their way.
I really am excited to show the world how us young adults can really change the world.
As they send good news back home, these influencers won't be slumming it, thanks to their brand new Aussie News camper vans provided by Juicy. So far, Aussie News Today has earned 800 media clips, reaching a worldwide audience of 201 million, with an earned media value of $2.4 million. We also gained 50,000 new followers on Instagram and Facebook, and reached more than 20 million people through social media. And our audience can't get enough of the content we're sharing, with more than 7 million video views and 900,000 engagements on the Aussie News Today Facebook page. Over the coming months, this will only continue to grow as we release content from all over Australia and share news from Aussies, backpackers, industry and influencers.
This is not. Oh, isn't it?
Oh, very good. And Honey Badger is the next Bachelor on Channel 10. Plug while I'm there. It'll be good fun. Okay, let's open it up to the floor for some questions. And I'm sure everyone wants to try and link what we're learning from you guys to their brands at home. I just had a quick question about the role of ambassadors. Do you think if you're a business at an industry trying to get more exposure, do you think an ambassador and value for money is, obviously with Tourism Australia it's worked, but is that a hard process, a detailed process? You've obviously got to check everything about your ambassador. You've got to make sure you're getting your value. You've got to know how to use. I think ambassadors can be misused sometimes.
Yeah, they can, and one of the key things is do your research, obviously, because they have to have an alignment to your brand and what you want to represent and project to consumers. And also, importantly, I've found throughout my career, working with a lot of different ambassadors, some good and some really, really terrible, is to ask other people that have worked with them and been in a situation where they could have been, stressed or whatever it might be, and how they deal with people in those situations. Because, sometimes when you're dealing with really, really big celebrities, they can be really, really big assholes as well. So it's really important to do. And sometimes, you need to make the decision of they might have masses of Instagram followers or whatever it might be, but if they're not a good person and they're not a good person to work with and they're not going to be good to your customers,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It really is. The damage that they can do to your brand is quite extensive. So you really do have to be careful. And we've been fortunate, but we do a lot of research into it, and we do quantitative research as well to see how these people resonate with our target audience, and that's important also. Yeah.
Okay, questions.
Maybe over a coffee later, Anthony, or maybe a glass of wine, actually. Yeah.
The question was, who are the dickheads that they won't work with? If you didn't hear that up the back of the room. Come on, guys, questions. Well, we've got these wonderful, talented women here that have done such a great job with this campaign.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Catherine from Phillipa Island Nature Park. You've obviously done an amazing job on the demand side and bringing the right visitors to Australia. What do you think the needs are Australia-wide, but particularly I'm interested in Victoria from the supply side? So what sort of experiences do you think we need to lift to really make this turn and keep turning?
I think we've got some really fantastic experiences already. I think it's just about making sure that that we get them out to our customer base, and that we make sure that they are ready to receive the changing nature of our guests, so that they're, particularly that they're ready to receive Asian guests. We've done a lot of work around the Signature Experiences program, and that's really around trying to show the depth and breadth of our of the experiences that we have. So I think we've got a really good base of experiences there. So it's really just about how we then get them out and get people dispersing and experiencing them. Yeah. You got anything to add to that, Lisa?
No, I totally agree with Pip, and at our industry briefings and things like that, we're constantly sharing how consumers are changing, and so it's often taking some of those insights into the simple things that you can do on a day-to-day basis, like better service or appealing to different cultures and things like that. It can be the very, very small things that make a very, very big difference. So it's keeping your eye on the detail as well as the bigger picture.
And again, Nicholas will be talking about this after lunch, giving you more, I'm imagining specific strategies to tap into those markets, particularly in China. Other questions? Anything at all? Oh, they're so polite, aren't they? So quiet. They're ready for a break. Yes?
Given the minister's gone and...
That's always a great start to a question. We're not panicked at all, Anthony, thank you.
And given that...
Do get you to thanks, Anthony. Thank you. So maybe if you start again, given the minister's gone...
Given the minister's gone, and given that my company, Sealink, just bought Fraser Island, interested to hear your views on... great to see you attacking that youth market again, but interested to hear what your overseas people are saying. Are we pushing it uphill, or do you feel that the market is going to make a comeback, given some of the government policies of the last year or two have made it pretty hard yakka?
Are you talking about the youth market or the working holiday market?
Well, working holiday / youth in general, yeah.
Yeah. Look, the drive behind the Aussie News Today funding and the additional funding we got from the government was to really address that issue that the working holiday maker visa was going, the take-up of that was going backwards in some markets. And we have seen an arrest in that decline, but we are putting some research out there to ask that very question at the moment. So is it still relevant? So is it a marketing problem, or is it that the categories moved on and people are travelling in a different way now? Because youth numbers to Australia are up. So youth are still coming here, but they're travelling in a slightly different way. So we don't know the answer to that question. We've got some research out at the moment to answer that. Yeah.
What are your plans for Fraser Island? That sounds exciting.
Well, we have lots of plans. Thank you for asking, Georgie.
We are about to go to lunch, but just a quick snapshot.
Anyone who wants to talk to us about distributing our product, we'd love to have a chat.
I do love Fraser Island. It's a beautiful spot. More questions? We've still got 5 minutes. Yes, great. Want to do a...
Well, whilst I have it, I might just hog it, if that's all right.
Yep.
It's Christian from Business Events Sydney. Congrats on the campaigns and the results you're having. I'm keen to get your thoughts on how those campaigns align with the business messaging that we have for business events, and I guess Tourism Australia and alignment with Austrade and how we present Australia as a business destination and a business events destination globally.
Well, I think what the Minister announced this morning in terms of the additional funding for business events, it's really trying to capitalise a little bit on the halo of what we've done with Dundee, but what we do with all of our campaigns, because whilst the business events customer does need different servicing and they do have slightly different needs, at the heart of it they are still consumers. They appreciate marketing and they see those messages, and that drives demand in the people that they're trying to service. So there is a link. They're not completely separate, but there is some additional work to do, and I don't mean to oversimplify what Penn does on a day-to-day basis at all, but it's really leveraging off the halo of some of these big marketing campaigns we're doing, and then getting underneath it and really doing the hard work around the meetings and the relationships, and I'm getting a thumbs up, so that's good. So I'll probably stop talking now unless you want to add something, Pip. Yeah.
Lisa, you're doing very well. There was another couple of questions over here. Yes?
Sorry, it's me again. Hi. I was at Marketplace in LA, obviously just after the launch of the campaign. So I suppose after doing several hundred or seeing a lot of the Aussie specialists, etc., probably a bit of confusion on our part as suppliers and their part as agents as to what the opportunities are. Obviously, some of them didn't necessarily get the advantage of the link-throughs from the campaign, and from our point of view as suppliers, if we're not, if we are apparently curated experiences which don't fit in with your signature experiences, so we don't fit into your box, what are the opportunities for us?
So Marketplace happened about 3 days after the Super Bowl, so it was great timing because we could talk about the campaign. But since then, we've done a lot of work with the Aussie specialist teams about how they can, obviously we had the 20 KDPs who are involved right at the get-go, and they were under pretty tight non-disclosure agreements to keep it tight, because obviously it was about the twist and the joke, and we just needed to keep that under wraps. As soon as we rolled the campaign out, we've done a whole round of comms with the Aussie specialists in the US market, and a lot of them have taken the creative. We sent the creative out probably 2 days later. They've taken the creative, they put it on their website, they put it on their social. They've completely embraced it and seen the opportunity and are seeing the results from it. So from that point of view, it's working really, really well. And I think, you know, from Tourism Australia's point of view, in terms of what are we doing for suppliers, I think we are creating demand for this destination, and then it's up to you guys on how you capitalise on that opportunity and the demand that's coming in as well.
And I know John referred to that in his speech. There was a huge increase in traffic to the website, which I'm sure we can get access to that slide if you like, because they were pretty powerful figures.
And I think that's the other thing. We do provide some pretty visible platforms around Australia.com and what we do socially. So every day we get more than 3,000 pieces of content for our social channels, and obviously we curate the best of the best. And as an industry, we've been getting so much better at the quality of that content being film and increasingly more video. So, you know, we have the biggest social following of any national tourism organisation. So it's really trying to leverage and capitalise on some of those strengths in the platforms.
And use the Aussie Specialist program as well. So everybody can put an offer on the platform, so that when the specialists are travelling in Australia, they can experience the products firsthand. And you can also put a product video up, just a quick 30 seconds. This is my product. This is why you should come and visit us. So there are lots of platforms that we provide for the industry, the broad industry.
And am I right assuming too that we won't see the full flow-on effects of this campaign for at least 12 months? Because if I'm planning a trip overseas with my family, I'm very unlikely to plan it with less than 12 months.
That's right. And so all of our targets for the campaign are, like everything, like youth, they're pegged to our 2020 targets.
Yep.
So, you know, everything we do looks at, yes, short-term measures, and then medium-term measures around brand health and how we're going in the aspiration, and the slide that John showed, if we're coming up, and then the last one obviously being visitation. It does take a while to flow through, just purely based on consumer behaviour.
Yeah, and we're a long way away. You've got to plan that in advance. We had one more question, I think.
Yeah, Matt Granfield from Brisbane Marketing. Great work on the Dundee campaign. It's bloody brilliant. I think everyone in this room would probably agree. Given the size and importance of the Chinese market, what are you planning over there? You showed us an influencer. I'm sure there's much more. Can you talk us through what you're planning in China to go with the amazing work in America?
Sure. We've got really big plans in China. We put a lot of budget into it. I think with the Chinese market, we have a very practical job to do. So we have to educate the market on Australia. So our Aussie Specialist program is very big there. But then we also are doing a whole range of things around the marketing side of things. And I'm going to point Fred out again, who's sitting over there. We've just had our planning in Sydney over the week, and they've got some really big plans in terms of what they're going to do on just the platforms over in China as well, because as everybody knows, none of the global platforms apply there. So we've got some really exciting partnerships coming up with those social platforms that really resonate in China as well.
And again, we've got a dedicated Aus.cn, so that's purely for China. And, you know, to Pip's point, it's trying to create, you know, the practicalities of travelling to Australia and travelling around Australia and getting the Chinese consumer to disperse with itineraries and, you know, regional experiences and things like that. So that's what we're really focusing on Oz.cn, and also more broadly with our social partnerships and things like that.
And then finally, aviation development. So we've seen some incredible aviation development over the past couple of years. We now fly from 17 cities in China directly into 6 cities in Australia. And so we're pretty happy with where that's sitting, but there are some pockets around aviation development that we just want to explore, particularly on the western side of the country. But so, you know, that's really important in the step change in terms of getting people to come here. So.
It's such a little thing, isn't it? Like, you've got all these people and potential customers, they can't get here, and make the routes easy, and really, you know, the number of flights makes it so much easier as well, doesn't it? And, you know, if you're relying as a business on just a website, Facebook and Instagram, you're not going to be hitting that market at all.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, how best to tap into the digital channels for Chinese consumers with Nicholas Chu from St Albans, which is going to be really fascinating. How to deal with disruption with Claudia Kocher. Claudia's on my table all the way from Miami, and she's an absolute delight, so I can't wait to hear from her. And developing shareable content that engages audiences with Laura Henderson from BuzzFeed. So a cracking afternoon. Now it's time for lunch, but first of all, can you please thank Lisa and Pip for such a great segment? Great, guys. So we will see you back here after lunch. Have a great time. Well done, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks, Georgie.